Before I open up the floor to everyone else in the room, I would like to ask two special guests who are in the audience with us today, Mouchon Aviv, a designer, educator, and media activist, and Penny Travelu, who's a cultural geographer, if you want to give us any spontaneous feedback on what we just heard. And you have a microphone there, Maxine, Daphne. You get to choose who goes first.
Thanks a lot. Well, where can I start? I mean, the interesting thing for me, as you said, I'm a geographer, so it's about place. And Ruth, at the point in your presentation, you put a very interesting quote from your first game, the play. The creation of good life is the business of us all. It is interesting that you put the good life, because that brought me another word which is quite close to utopia. It is, I will say first in Greek and then make it into English, which is Eftopia, and it's Utopia, meaning good place. And it's about the good life. And this is something I mean, at least for me, it is quite interesting to see how we make good place. And it is interesting as well that I saw that quite a lot of the work is about physical place, that we start for that. We shouldn't forget about what is the physicality of place, that we all live within and on top of a surface of Earth, in a sense. So we'll summarize somehow what can make a good place according to what somehow you presented. So it's something about ownership, it's about voice, is about shared and shared place, is about collaborative processes of making this place happen. So it's space for all, is activation of our own future visions, as Christina presented through your own work, is about co-creative and do it with others. We can't have a good place without being with others, but as well making it with others. And it's about making, producing, and consuming this place. Is about tactics, so meaning that it's not the planner, but it is people, again, on a certain level and grassroots, so it's about tactical urbanism, if I put here some sort of keywords. Is about active citizenship, dynamic place, meaning there is a continuous process of making and creating place to happen. And what it is as well very interesting here is that is non-hierarchical processes of making this place is hierarchical, and there shouldn't be power structures to make the place, so it's horizontal decision making. So I'm just picking up things that you somehow discuss through all your works, and obviously that brings obviously the peer-to-peer part of making a good place. And finally, is about how do we make playful and playable places happen. And interesting, you mentioned actually the pre-industrial sort of pre-modern kind of play that is communal, that people were making plays together. I mean, if we talk about, particularly about medieval, town market places, these were made by people and collectively consumed. And play was quite important part of making this place. I mean, thinking of the carnival, and the carnival as a play, as a kind of event to bring people together in a transgressive way. And it's about homo ludens, man the player, which obviously has to do with situationism, but even before that with, you know, Henri Lefebvre, the, the urban sociologist in a sense, a French one, about, you know, production of plays, and play was definitely part of it. So in a sense, you bring all this in what your work showed, but I have a question, however, which has to do as well with networks. And okay, because you talk about specific places, bringing people together from a specific environment, or taking people in a specific place, like in the example you mentioned in Croatia. But how can we see this be multiplied and having networks beyond the local and creating something transglobal where the impact of that on can happen in that level. Okay, thank you.
Actually, maybe you want to respond to that question so we get the dialogue going before we have the second response.
ambition was always really core to the evolution of this project, but we haven't got there. What we've discovered so far is that when we create a new place, so when we create an event and we decide that we're going to create a set of games and work with people in a particular place to make the work, we found at the moment that the process we have kind of compelling, engaging and fun when we're all together in a place. And it's our feeling is that that it may just be a question of us not having got the software there yet. I don't know, that always feels like a bit of an excuse. But it feels like perhaps if the software, I mean, we're often working on relatively tiny budgets for game production, and people are used to working with online games that have huge budgets, so we're kind of working against what's natural in a way. But our idea was that we would have people creating games that were then circulated in the same way that social media circulates, and that this thing becomes an engine for its own kind of creation as people want to gain kudos and fun of sharing the things that they have created. And the way we were trying to do that was by embedding within the kind of game platform the ability for people to add things like local dialect and local sound. So a lot of the South End games have got really great kind of Essex accents, which are very distinctive. And people really delight in hearing their own dialects and their own accents in a game that is then shared globally. So so that's why the kind of local is so focused on, because it's based actually on understanding that when you share that globally, that's when that becomes really important, because people can develop a sense of pride and identity around their place as distinct from another place. So it's something we've thought about quite a lot. If we get our way, then the next round of software development will enable us to create a platform that people will want to, but it'll be easier for people to design stuff and make things and share them more easily. And I think we've just got a bit too much friction there at the moment, but we'll see.
Yeah, we work mostly offline, as you probably figured from the talk. But what we try to do is create these agents for change, like because everything we put on and all the devices, it's very transparent. You can just take it and use it in your own practice. That's nothing locked down. And so the nicest, I think, feedback is when people after the game or maybe in a workshop say they want to use it, or we see them taking it away and inserting it into their own community. So I guess it's more like a contagious approach, and it's not, I mean, yeah, global, that would be great, but we travel a lot, but I think it's very organically growing, and yeah.
Okay. So you'll have to excuse me, because this was very inspiring. So my notes are all over the place. So I'll try to find some kind of narrative within them, and hopefully get to a question mark at the end. So the thing that I was really interested in is the way that through both of your presentations, there's this experience of game rules as political philosophy, and then gameplay as civics within this political philosophy. Now, when we look at things like that, then we need to ask ourselves, where do we want to put the questions? Because as Ruth put it, the platform game, the Super Mario styled game, is very moralistic. You do this, good things happen. You do that, bad things happen. And that's kind of the political philosophy of that game. And then you model things on top of that, which is very playful. But then what is the role of that political philosophy? Is it there to say, this is how I want things to happen, or to provide a provocation, kind of this is how things actually are, and this is why I don't like it. So that's one question mark, but I have more. So the place that I'm, you know, I'm kind of concerned about this open source as a model for civics, because there is a very important shift that happens when we get out of the digital system, and you know, I wouldn't want open source hackers to be the government. I think you know, I don't see open source as a democracy. And, the open source world doesn't see itself as a democracy. It's a meritocracy, and as a meritocracy, it has its own politics. And sometimes, you know, one of the terms that that the Linux community really likes to prouds itself in is that Linux is the benevolent dictator. Maybe benevolent dictators are something worth considering as a provocation for political systems, but I'm not sure it would really work. Maybe we should play it and find out. The thing, so I'm kind of concerned about about level 1. I define it as level 1, and if we're talking about utopias, I'm really interested in, maybe we can discuss level 2. And level 2 would be, now that we formulated what we want, how do we get it? Okay, so how do we turn that demand into something that is actionable, and then we can see it happen in the world? That would be a game I would like to play, because the thing with games is this idea of encapsulation. The game starts, the game ends. But we're trying to play games about the life beyond the game. So how do we break these walls? And one of the things that I feel could be a pointer for that is this idea of, Ruth, you just mentioned it. So no corporations, no government. What are you going to do? That's interesting, because it's not obvious that it's a scary moment as well. It's not only possibility, it's also danger. I think we had it in Christina's presentation as well, in kind of a similar way. The world stops, no more business as usual. How do you move forward? This question that unlike the platform game, doesn't have a moralistic underpinning, or it's not built on a pre-made political philosophy. I think that's where the potential lies, because the events in that sense are kind of multi-layered. You have you're inviting people to do game design within a designed game. So you've designed the rule of the game, and then you're inviting people to do game design within them. Maybe that can be a direction. So imagine a question mark now.
I definitely hear a question mark. Do you want to answer, please?
I don't know if I can answer all these questions. It's really, actually, I would have to think of some of them. But maybe one thing that what you mentioned first, do we look for solutions or provocations? And I think sometimes to look for solutions is not the right way to go forward, because it kind of closes down some things, and also it also closes down the way you approach a problem. And by creating a place where you can also be evil, which is necessary or absurd, or even not be politically correct. You can actually, and not being focused only on the solution, but the experience of that you can change something, that you can change your attitude towards things, and you can, within a short game, are able to think things differently and shift perspective. And that's really, I think that's entitling, and experience is the basis for every single change, that you feel you can change something, and you don't have to wait that someone fixes it for you. And this is, I think, maybe someone else, and then I think of the other question.
Yeah. On the question of the open source question, I just completely agree with everything you said. It was in the context of kind of hierarchical approach to planning, then talking about open source can be helpful because it just is a very fast way to have people think about lateral production and non-hierarchical production and decision-making. But the minute you burrow down anywhere, then there are many nightmares lie there, and I agree, we don't want that. On the question of, okay, now we know what we want, how are we going to get it? So we've created these games and we've discovered how we want the world to be different, so how do we now make this real? Well, actually, when we started Play Your Place, we thought that that's what we were going to be able to do, because our plan was that people would make beautiful, compelling, persuasive games that then planners would be able to look at and say, aha, you see, so here there's the demand for this and that. And we really, it was very stupid. And we discovered over a couple of years, just the minute you have people make drawings, make ideas, suddenly things go crazy. And they are, people, you know, it's not the right formula for that, but we haven't given up on it. And one of the things we want to do next is to go and work with architects and some evil developers and have them use our tool as a way to present their scenario planning for people, so it becomes a kind of open platform for people to then comment by remixing, basically. So we're still seeking a way to make these games actually have a real, you know, to have some real traction in the world. And we just need to see what happens there.
This is actually great. This is turning out to be a very, very rich discussion. I want to jump in and say something myself, and anyone else wants to jump in, please raise your hands, and we have a microphone. I see a hand. I see two hands over there, so could we get the microphone moving in that direction, and then we'll get it moving in your direction. First, what you were saying about this whole planning and open source thing, you know, that's a big problem with these so-called participation projects. You know, a lot of times, you know, city planners try to have people participate as a fig leaf, you know, and as you were saying, they give them these formalized things and say, yeah, you get to have a say in the matter, but only within this frame that we offer you. And what you were trying to do was trying to open that up. Mm-hmm. And what I found fascinating is that you, through adding drawings, you know, through adding this other medial mode, you really, you know, generate a lot of noise in the system, and you hit the limits of quantification. So how are you going to quantify these drawings? How are you going to put them into one of these Excel spreadsheets? You know, that just completely changes the name of the game right there, and gives people a different kind of voice, and, you know, what happens from there is up for grabs. But, you know, I think that's quite fascinating. And otherwise, you know, the point you mentioned, Christina, I think is very important. You know, play traditionally is thought of as this immoral space, right? And a space where we can be evil, where we can be absurd, where we can be stupid. It gives us that freedom. And you know, evolutionary biologists say that it gives organisms the freedom to leave, you know, patterns of behavior, to make them more loose, more flexible, and actually change their mode of being and see the world in new ways. And that is, you know, the great potential I see in play and what you're doing here. And then the question of what can one actually do, what kind of game one can play to change the world, level 2, is also a fascinating question. And I think, you know, what you were talking about reminded me of what Naomi Klein was calling for. She says, you know, capitalism, advanced capitalism, has, you know, this, what she calls disaster capitalism. In moments of crisis, they already have their programs that they want to introduce. And what we need is something like disaster socialism, whatever you want, but sort of, you know, games we want to play in this moment, like, you know, 2008 financial crisis, where everything is up for grabs. What kind of new forms of utopian peer-to-peer interaction do we have ready that we can roll out and just start playing, you know? Okay. So we have, does someone, a microphone? Yes, please. You know, it's on. They have the control over there. You don't have to hit a button.
Cool. First of all, thank you, Christina, and thank you, Ruth, for wonderful and inspiring presentations. And I couldn't help myself but make a few comments as the representative of the gamification lab on the academic side, okay? We are the good guys. So what I would like to do is I thought of embedding both of your projects in something that goes far beyond gamification and what we call the ludification of culture, for example, or the ludic turn. And then it goes back to what you, Mark, said about the solitary and the collective. So I think since the World Wide Web, since the invention of the World Wide Web in the 1993, and the proliferation of online gaming in the first big online game, MMORPG, in 1997, what we see is the back to the collective. So never before have the people played, never before have the masses played to such an extent as it is happening now. And then going back to your project, it was very comforting to see how civic engagement-based projects and artistic projects use gaming for creating social good, especially having worked on an article in which I have looked on the other side of the coin, namely, and bumping off of what you said, from what you said, Christina, about the World Peace Game. This is already happening, right? The collective games that are used for the social change, but not by the artists, not by the civic society, but by the corporations. And to give you an example, and I'm sure you're aware of that if you've looked, or if you used the World Peace game as your example, and this game, by the way, goes back to 1961. And then what happens these days, it's something that the games by Jane McGonigal, the World Without Oil, or the Evoke, the alternate reality games that at the end of the day, we have to realize that the World Without Oil has been sponsored a big collaborative gaming project, networked online, sponsored by the World Bank, basically. And also who stands behind, I don't want to politically judge, I'm just trying to kind of give the other perspective. And also what has been established in 1968 is the Institute for the Future. And those guys, I looked up on their website just recently, what they do is they not only propose games as you do in the way that we have a single game that is supposed to bring something good in the society via the mechanics, they propose the whole tool sets, the tool sets that are ready out there for the creation of the social change. So something is happening. We call it, the academics call it the ludic turn. And what you presented is this one side of things, but something is also happening, and it has been noticed, and it is being used also as a tool by the neoliberals, basically. So I don't know what, do you want to somehow...
I guess we all want to say something about that, but I think there is a problem, and especially with that. All this, also what you mentioned within the gamification, that everything is formatted and patterned, and that we kind of work within templates. So we stop asking the right questions, and I think that's the critical thing. So I guess all these different. You should engage with all kinds of things, and you should embrace confusion and confuse yourself regularly in order to not be happy with something that offers a solution. I would be I would be skeptical about it, because there's not just one solution, and there's not just one thing that's right. Actually, there are a lot of wrong things, and so yeah, embrace confusion would be one thing, and to really. Yeah, to not fall for these templates.
Yeah, and also the other thing that kind of properly feeling our way into network culture encourages us to do is also to think not just laterally, but kind of to look upwards at the frames that are being created for us and to think critically about that. And I think World Without Oil, it really gave me the shivers when I had a look at that project, because it seems to be proposing this question that is setting everyone up to really deal with a very, very important question. And yet, all of the responses are all about growing vegetables in your back garden, and none of them are about actually reconsidering what a kind of political framework or what political change we might need actually to deal with that situation. So you can't stop people doing horrible things with lovely frameworks. and that's just life, I suppose. But I suppose we all just need to kind of constantly be looking at where the cracks are in these processes.
Hopefully you get the infrastructure for your network.
We do have 2 more questions, and I want to say something shortly to that. I thank you for bringing that up. I agree completely with the diagnosis of a broad-scale process of socio-cultural ludification that has been going on for at least 40 years, and has a bunch of different reasons, and gamification is just sort of a symptom of that. But what we have is a completely new situation where old concepts of play and game obviously don't hold anymore. It's not this limited phenomenon. You have pervasive gaming, you have games spreading, leaving the temporal and spatial boundaries and being applied to real world problems. And this is a completely new situation where it's not very clear to draw the lines of good and evil. I don't want to get moralistic. And Institute for the Future and Jane McGonigal have some very, very interesting game concepts, play concepts up there that we could have talked about today, which I don't want to go into because we have 2 more questions. So who has a microphone over there? And I see you. I have not forgotten about you, and I see you. And I see you. And maybe we can pool the questions because, yeah, we have a bit more time, but maybe we can get like 2 questions at a time. That would be good. Right.
Okay.
And I see you too. Yeah.
Hello. Okay, my name is Cornelia. I have a question to Ruth. Not specifically about the notion of play or games, but what's also in the title, play as a commons. And I picked up on what you said about the commons, that you want to open it up from the narrow understanding of it's a resource, commonly administrated or governed resource, to something else. And I wonder if this is really helpful. I have a bit of a problem with that understanding of the commons. Because for me, the term, I mean, if you look in a program, almost every second panel or contribution uses the term commons. And people don't like very much to define it. And it's very vaguely about inclusiveness, non-hierarchical collaboration. And it feels like it's a bit like this hippie, like utopia of love and peace. And we all, do things together and we love each other. And I'm very uncomfortable with this unpreciseness. I see on the one hand it has a potential, it's a projection field as long as it's not really filled. On the other hand, you also refer to free software, and I think free software is the reason why free software is relevant, because somebody created a license, which is a legal construction based on very precise rules. If that wouldn't be there, free software wouldn't exist. So for me, the potential in commons is really about negotiating, about trying to define, about discussing what we want it to be, about rules. Not in order to set it in stone, but to get this, for me, the potential is to get this process going. And that I wonder how you use it and what you get from this using the term commons.
I think maybe I was unclear, because I don't disagree with anything you've said. And I guess the only thing I wanted to add into this question of kind of it all being about resource management was about it not being one person or a group of people deciding how we manage our resources and then that's done for good. But a really important aspect of maintaining the commons is the constant negotiation of rules as the situation changed, and for us all to take responsibility in that process. That's all I meant. It wasn't about saying it just needs to be fluffy and happy and lovely.
Hiya. I wanted to ask about the role of the creator of the game. So when they create a game for, say, the public, their role, once it's given to the public, becomes more of a facilitator or a moderator. And my question is, how do you maintain the integrity of the game and keep it as open and accessible as possible without censorship?
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure I understand the question. I'll answer what I think you're asking. So it's in the mechanics of the game, I think, the answer to your question. When anyone has created a game, it's their game, it has their name on it, they can share it. If anyone comes along and moderates it and modifies it, then it becomes their game. The original person is credited, but the original game still exists, and there's now a new game that has been changed and that can then be shared by that new person. On the question of censorship, as we have always done with Furtherfield, we just have a spirit of total permissiveness. So we have one rule, which is don't be hateful. And if anyone makes an argument to us that there is something hateful in what has been done, we'll look at it and we'll make a dictatorial decision about it. And we've got a certain mechanic to punish people for being hateful a lot. That hopefully gives them some room to be hateful by accident. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was fascinated in, because your rules, Christina, the brief version that we got was be pleasant and generous, but that was 2 games ago. And I'm really interested in how the byproducts of the games, and I'm from the Unmonastery, which in a way was like an 8-month extended exploration of a metaphor, almost like a game, but you know, what the byproducts become are further rules in a way, and it's recycling that distillate out of the process that becomes the fun part, it seems to me. So I think my question to you is, what are your next rules for the next game?
Well, I think I already mentioned that this locality, to be in a space longer and to deal with the infrastructure of a city and to appropriate that and to be a parasite almost there and override it collaboratively with local players, that could be, I think that I would be interested in pursuing that. And also, right now we were just talking about to write actually a book for kids, a utopian manual or a manual to utopia, to cherish what is already there and what is then trampled down. So, but it's loose. We're trying to develop that.
You know, that's actually a great point. You know, just having become a father myself, kids are so good at this. There's so much to learn, and it's really, we have lost something along the way, and it's really about accessing that way of approaching the world again. And the point about the distilling of the experience to make new rules being the fun part, you know, it just made me think, yeah, I can imagine that that's a really fun part for some people, and for other people it's other parts. One can have, you know, can draw fun from different stages of this process. I have 2 questions that I really wanted to include, and then I close it because then I think time's up. But back there was a question. Do you want to go first, and then I saw you, and then you go second. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sure. The microphone is moving your way.
So I was just inspired by your work with the children and how you played the game with them. But I was also very inspired by the logbook that you brought in to actually capture the empirical data, or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But how do you sort of deal with that when you work with kids? Because if you hand them a logbook like that, then they'll write a few lines and then that will be that, or at least that's my experience, because I work with kids and try to also, you know, put this idea into their heads of as if, or having this playful hacker sort of attitude towards technology in general. But it's really hard for us to sort of capture that data. I don't like to use the word data, but do you have any ideas of how do you do that?
Oh, we have that problem too, and usually it comes in a lot of bad handwriting and loose snippets, and then weeks after you try to process that information, it's all like you cannot connect the thought process. So I think it's a work in progress, and the logbooks we only employed so far with grown-ups. But for example, in one game we had a poster that would trace the development of the idea on the poster. It was just next time I bring it. But it's you start with an original idea, and then you sit together and you develop that idea in different areas, like really ugly, really beautiful, architectural, in different areas, and you push it further and you create these variations, and from these variations you create new ideas. So you push that process further, and then you have 4 action corners where you think about how could you put that idea into the first action step, to work in that spirit, because you cannot do something that utopian maybe, but there is always something that can work and function in the spirit, and then you can play with acting it out or like different manifestations. I mean, maybe it doesn't always have to be writing, because it's really hard to process.
Well, and you know, again, I think this is the problem one has between quantitative data and qualitative data. And you have this in anthropology, sociology, you know, you have these different types of methods. And maybe this qualitative stuff you're getting through your drawings and through these logbooks is something that you cannot be captured by the capture all logic. I mean, I know they're working on computers that can parse semantics, and they're using them to actually, you know, analyze the news and feed that into automated trading bots to do high frequency trade. They're doing all of that, but still, they're never going to be able to understand these drawings or what people put in this logbook. Yeah.
Our crude kind of attempt at that was the rating process. So where people could rate for fun, local flavour, artistry, and just a brilliant game. Oh no, idea for change was the last one. So this was our starting to think about how we might, you know, so we envisaged 15,000 people creating games and then rating one particular for a brilliant idea for change, and this was how we were going to provide the planners with the data that they needed. So it's kind of maybe there's some way to have embedded within a system the kind of people who produce it then become the people who rank it. But in a way that's the less interesting question than the question of the qualitative, the assessment of the qualitative experience.
That's what I was just thinking. Maybe it's more about the process than the product.
Yeah, the processing of it. Like you collect the data, but how does it become useful for yourself? And this is like the moment where we try to develop something that you use it, that you process it, and that you don't stop there. But you, what you mentioned, that you create something new and maybe a new question that you can deal with continuously.
Thank you very much for the presentations. I guess this question emerges from what has been discussed and commented already about this idea of unrealistic or naive pre-modern community and what communal means. So I was just thinking, especially in relation to what being in common is, what is the relationship between the individual and the collective in the works that you both do? I know Ruth mentioned about this idea of community in a way that people come together and play based on some shared values, but this could be a bit of trap sometimes if we think about, you know, exclusion and inclusion. So I'm just thinking about this tension about between the individual and the community and the collective, and how you're thinking about that in your work, if it's something that you would like to comment on. Thank you.
Just a short one. In the Econ game, we change between individual experience and group experience, and I think in terms of facilitation, that's very interesting, because not everyone feels comfortable of sharing ideas from the get-go in a big group, and it usually is a few people who are really comfortable and they push it forward. So we break that pattern, and we shift around. There's a lot of like one-on-ones, individually, smaller groups, and all of a sudden they're bigger groups. So by the end, you pitch it, everyone feels somehow comfortable, which is maybe dealing with that.
It does come down to the mechanics again, which is how I might describe what you've just said. So in the physical, social scenarios where we're running public events, we've discovered that there's really interesting things happen intergenerationally. So very often what we've discovered is that people who have a long experience in a place will have stories that they tell, and they will feel passionately about the preservation or the need to change something. Meanwhile, their grandchildren might be then making drawings that would illustrate different elements of that then go in the game. And then the drawings that the children make spark other conversations. So there's something in that process that I think is quite interesting. And then the problem of inclusion and exclusion in the online game, the fact that you can upload your own drawings, but you can also include drawings made by someone else who you don't know, and then you can go and explore the games that they made. It provides this way for you to kind of follow the breadcrumbs of other people's imaginations and other people's life experience, and to kind of really enjoy their kind of odd creativity is what it mainly is.
I think it points to the fact that the games and the play actually function as a medium of connecting different people and having this collective exchange, and that's where the real power lies. Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you, Christina. Thank you all for discussing. If you're interested in these topics, please follow the play stream, which is going out through the whole conference. There's going to be a keynote on Saturday, and there are a bunch of other events in the coming days. Look at the program. Thank you very much.